Yes Minister wasn't just a comedy, it was a blueprint written by insiders for how British power actually works. And what we're about to tell you will change the way you watch it forever. Secret 1.
I must insist on direct access to all information. Never again do I want to hear that phrase, there are some things it is better for a minister not to know.
Let's start with something that changes everything. Yes, Minister wasn't just inspired by politics, it was built from the inside out. Writers Anthony J. and Jonathan Lynn didn't sit in a writer's room and make it up. They sat down with real former civil servants and serving ministers, people who had actually lived this world, and pumped them for information. The tactics Sir Humphrey uses to delay, deflect and derail his minister, those came straight from real Whitehall playbooks. The language, the circuitous memos, the endless committees that achieve absolutely nothing. All of it was lifted from genuine government practice. Some of the most absurdly funny lines in the entire series were taken almost verbatim from real conversations. Jay and Lynn have admitted that some of their best material was handed to them on a plate by insiders who wanted the public to finally understand what actually goes on. When you're laughing at Sir Humphrey tying Jim Hacker in knots, you're not watching fiction, you're watching a documentary with better suits.
As you say, Minister, if that is what you really want.
It's treating cabinet ministers as though they were irresponsible 10-year-olds.
Secret 2.
People know about the winner of the Napoleon Prize.
Oh, it's top secret.
Oh, you mean everyone?
No,
Top secret.
Here's one that sounds completely made up, but it absolutely isn't. Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Lady herself, was one of the biggest fans of Yes Minister. Not privately, not reluctantly, openly and enthusiastically. She reportedly watched it religiously and quoted it in cabinet meetings. But it gets better. In 1984, for a special comic relief style event, Thatcher didn't just appear in a sketch, she co-wrote it.
Forward to receiving your plan for abolition soon. Tomorrow, shall we say? I'd like you to announce it before it all leaks.
Yes, tomorrow.
Sitting down with Jonathan Lynn and Anthony J., the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom helped craft a scene in which she played herself, going head-to-head with Jim Hacker over cabinet reshuffles and, brilliantly, outmanoeuvring Sir Humphrey at his own game. Now think about that for a second. The real Prime Minister appeared alongside fictional characters to parody her own government. Her office loved it because, as far as Thatcher was concerned, the show was exposing the bureaucrats far more than the politicians. It was, in a very strange way, her way of using comedy as a weapon. And it worked. Secret 3.
And they're putting their announcement out to the press at 5 p.m.
Minister's daughter in Badger protest vigil.
Yes Minister came extraordinarily close to never existing at all. When the scripts were first submitted to the BBC, senior executives went into a quiet panic. The concern wasn't the quality of the writing. Everyone agreed it was sharp and brilliantly funny. The concern was the consequences. There were genuine fears that broadcasting a show which so explicitly mocked the workings of Whitehall could damage the BBC's relationship with the government. Remember, the BBC's licence fee is decided by politicians. Upsetting the civil service, the very people who process that paperwork, felt like a serious institutional risk. Several executives pushed to have the show shelved entirely, or at the very least heavily rewritten to soften the satire. It was only through the determination of a small number of champions within the corporation, combined with the writers refusing to water it down, that the show made it to air in 1980. When it became an instant critical and popular success, those same executives who tried to kill it were suddenly nowhere to be found.
Sir Humphrey, I think the minister is going to be more than a little embarrassed.
What do you mean?
Minister's daughter in nude Badger protest vigil.
Secret 4.
And I'm happy to announce that we're now ready to put our proposals into publication.
Sir Humphrey Appleby, magnificently pompous, infuriatingly brilliant, and utterly devoted to the preservation of the status quo, didn't spring fully formed from the imagination of two writers. He was based on a composite of real civil servants, but there was one figure who loomed particularly large in the inspiration: Sir William Armstrong, former head of the Home Civil Service. Armstrong was renowned for his extraordinary ability to make politicians feel they were in charge while ensuring that very little actually changed. He had a gift for language that buried meaning, under layers of qualification, and a personality that radiated confident authority while committing to absolutely nothing. Sound familiar? Those who knew Armstrong reportedly recognised him immediately in Sir Humphrey's manner, his speech patterns, and his philosophical approach to the relationship between minister and Mandarin. The show's writers were careful never to make the connection explicit, but for those inside Whitehall watching, there was never any doubt about where a significant portion of Britain's most iconic television character had come from.
What, that silly grand design? Bernard, that was precisely what you had to avoid. How did this come about? I shall need a very good explanation.
Secret 5.
To our local museum as soon as I get up to the constituency at the weekend. Well, I can't hold on to it, you know. Government property. Now, what was your question?
If Sir Humphrey had his real-world inspiration, it would only be fair that Jim Hacker did too. And he did, several of them in fact. The hapless, well-meaning, eternally bamboozled Minister for Administrative Affairs was a distillation of a particular type of politician that the writers had observed with great attention. The ambitious but essentially powerless elected official who genuinely believes he is running things. Harold Wilson, Jim Callaghan and various cabinet ministers of the 1960s and 70s all fed into the Hacker character. The writers were particularly interested in the gap between how politicians present themselves publicly as decisive, visionary leaders, and how they actually behave privately, which is to say, confused, reactive, and desperate for approval. Paul Eddington, who played Hacker to perfection, did extensive research by meeting real politicians and observing how they moved through rooms, how they spoke to staff, and how they reacted when things went wrong. He found, he later said, that the scripts required almost no exaggeration whatsoever. The comedy was already there, baked into the reality.
What's his room number?
I must formally advise you against this, Minister.
Advice noted.
Room 4017.
Secret 6.
Only those officials for whom the information submitted may be deemed prima facie to have a need to know.
Here's where things get genuinely surreal. Yes, Minister was so accurate in its portrayal of government that it was reportedly used, informally but seriously, as a training aid, not by comedy writers, by civil servants, newly appointed officials joining. Whitehall departments in the 1980s were sometimes advised to watch the show to understand the dynamics they were about to enter. The relationship between ministers and their permanent secretaries, the way policy gets made and unmade, the art of the obstructive meeting, all of it was presented in Yes Minister with such fidelity that it functioned as a how-to guide. There are accounts of senior civil servants quoting Sir Humphrey in internal meetings, approvingly. Not as a joke, but as a reference point. Techniques for managing ministers that Sir Humphrey deploys in the show were recognised by real mandarins as genuine tools of the trade. The line between parody and instruction manual had completely dissolved.
You seem to be of the same mind, Humphrey.
Indeed. Where did those proposals come from?
Secret 7.
If the right people don't have power, do you know what happens? The wrong people get it.
This one will genuinely make you stop and stare. Long before the word Brexit existed, long before the referendum, long before anyone was seriously talking about Britain leaving the European community, Yes Minister laid out the entire argument, on both sides, with almost prophetic clarity. In a 1981 episode, the show depicted British politicians privately admitting that their enthusiasm for Europe was primarily about geopolitical leverage rather than genuine belief in the European project, while civil servants explained in detail why Britain's relationship with the continent was structurally awkward and unlikely to ever be fully comfortable. The tensions, the contradictions, the competing interests, all of it was there. When Brexit became the defining political event of a generation, journalists and academics went back to those episodes and were astonished. The arguments being made in 2016 were being made, almost word for word, in 1981. The writers hadn't predicted the future, they had simply observed the present with such precision that the future had nowhere else to go.
If it has been commanded by those who represent the people.
Well, I can't accept that, Sir Humphrey. No man is an island.
I agree, Bernard.
Secret 8.
It's just that there are certain special problems in individual departments.
Now, what about this question of the quota?
It is almost impossible to imagine anyone other than Nigel Hawthorne playing Sir Humphrey. His performance is one of the great achievements in British television acting. Precise, layered, brilliantly funny and occasionally terrifying. But he came extraordinarily close to never being cast at all. When the show was in development, there were serious discussions about casting more established names in the lead roles. Hawthorne was well regarded in theatre circles, but was not, at that point, a major television name. Several producers wanted someone with a bigger profile attached to the show to help sell it to the network and to audiences. It was Jonathan Lynn who fought hardest to keep Hawthorne, insisting that the character required someone who could make intellectual superiority genuinely funny rather than simply irritating. Hawthorne's ability to deliver Sir Humphrey's impossibly long sentences, some running to dozens of clauses, as if they were the most natural thing in the world, was, Lynn argued, irreplaceable. He was right. Hawthorne went on to receive a BAFTA and an international career that eventually led to an Oscar nomination. The producers who'd been sceptical said nothing.
We must, in my view, always have the right to promote the best man for the job, regardless of sex.
Secret 9.
We gave up the tanner, the threepenny bit, the 2-bob piece and the half-crown, but they cannot and will not destroy the British sausage.
Yes Minister became hugely popular across the English-speaking world, which was expected. What was not expected was the enthusiasm with which it was embraced by governments that had no particular cultural connection to Britain, and more to the point, by governments whose relationship with democratic accountability was, shall we say, complicated. The show was reportedly watched with great enjoyment by officials in several authoritarian or semi-authoritarian states who found Sir Humphrey's methods not satirical but aspirational, the techniques he uses to prevent democratic oversight, to ensure that inconvenient ministers cannot actually implement policy, and to preserve institutional power against elected interference. These were recognised in certain quarters not as absurdity but as best practice. This created a genuinely uncomfortable irony at the heart of the show's international success. A comedy designed to hold British bureaucracy to account was being used, in some corners of the world, as a celebration of exactly the behaviour it was meant to expose. The writers were made aware of this and found it, according to Jonathan Lynn, both flattering and deeply unsettling. Secret 10.
But the Chief Whip will be phoning through the moment it's over.
Will they? What if they have? Which phone?
Yes Minister ran from 1980 to 1984, then returned as Yes Prime Minister from 1986 to 1988. When it ended, it did so not because it had run out of ideas. The writers have always maintained they could have continued indefinitely, but because of a combination of exhaustion, contractual complexity, and the sense that the show had said what it needed to say. But here's what's remarkable. The show ended nearly 40 years ago. The world it described, Whitehall in the early Thatcher era, bears almost no surface resemblance to modern British politics. And yet, when you sit down and watch it today, almost nothing feels dated. The dynamics are identical. The language has changed. The technology has changed. The faces have changed, but the essential relationship between elected politicians and permanent bureaucracy, between what is announced and what is done, between democratic will and institutional inertia, is precisely as Yes Minister described it. That's not a coincidence, and it's not nostalgia. It's the show's deepest, most uncomfortable secret. It wasn't really a comedy about the 1980s at all. It was a comedy about power. And power, it turns out, doesn't change. It just changes its suits.